We're going to move into our next session, which is really where we're going to have the focus on the Asia-Pacific region, which has been long promised in this event today, and the clocks have caught up with us a little bit. We're going to be hearing from Jack and Michelle, who are in Singapore and Hong Kong, respectively, I believe, although people are moving all over the place. Let me introduce them and just give you a little bit of context. Jack is a very well-known scholar to many of us, a regular visitor to Australia, and I've asked him and Michelle to present some work today that is work in progress, so be kind. But it's part of a long-standing research interest that I have observed from Jack's work over many years, which is advocating for much more attention on the fate of digital labour, or people working in technology broadly defined, and especially given his work, technology labour that is often under-recognised, which is a theme that's come out a lot already today. So we're going to be hearing about repair technicians in the franchise CarlCare, and both Jack and Michelle have written already on some of this repair work, and Michelle has been doing some deep ethnographic engagement with this repair franchise in different parts of the world. So that's what we have in store. To introduce them formally, Dr. Jack Linchuan Qiu is Shaw Foundation Professor in Media Technology at the Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. He's published more than 130 research articles, chapters and reports, and 10 books in English and Chinese, including the extraordinary book Goodbye, iSlave, World Factory in the Information Age, and I think the book that many of us have been inspired by too, Working Class Network Society with MIT Press. He's a recipient of the C. Edwin Baker Award for the advancement of scholarship on media, markets and democracy, and an elected fellow of the International Communication Association. Michelle Maolu is an assistant professor in the Department of Cultural Studies at Lingnan. Her research interests include critical media studies, science and technology studies, and global China studies. Her past and current research investigates China's digital rise in Africa, and that's what we're going to be hearing about today. Without further ado, I would like to hand over the floor to Jack and Michelle.
Thank you, Mel, for inviting us, and I'm particularly honored to speak to our friends in QUT, where I visited recently, actually. And so the case I'm going to share, actually, together with Michelle. Michelle was the person who really started to teach me about CarlCare. I learned it from her. So what I'm going to do in the first 10 minutes also is to more of giving a framing of how we look at this. Is probably, by our knowledge, the world's largest mobile phone repair global chain store. Okay, there's no other thing that is close to this chain store that is called CarlCare. CarlCare belongs to the larger company called Transsion. And Transsion has 3 mobile phone brands, right? And now they're expanding into other more high-end markets. But the one that first attracted Michelle and my attention is the brand called Techno, right? So that's the middle-range brand from Transsion, the corporation, Transsion Holdings. And Techno was the first smartphone that used African dark skin tone data sets to train its AI camera for so that's how it actually became the dominant brand in Africa. Okay, because traditionally we know from decolonial computing critical analysis that most of the training data sets for AI cameras used to be light skin tone, right? Caucasian white faces being the default. But Transient, the company started, okay, to optimize its AI using African faces. So that's how it started to grow and become a dominant player in Africa, in the Middle East, and now expanding into Southeast Asia. The latest we know is that in big countries such as Indonesia, the Philippines, Transient, especially techno, I think just techno alone accounts for roughly 10%. Okay, of the so not as dominant as they are in Africa. In Africa, they got overall, especially East and West Africa, I think the market share is close to half of the market, right? And but then where does CarlCare fit in? CarlCare is where you can take your phone to repair, right? So the first image you saw on our first slide was actually in Chiang Mai, in Thailand, where I visited a couple months ago. And normally, if your phone after, okay, the warranty period usually is 1 year. After the warranty period, if you want to fix your Huawei, okay, or your Samsung phone, you have to pay 1,000 Thai baht. But for CarlCare, you only need to pay 250, so a quarter of the price. Not to mention other phones that are designed, we learned enough, okay, from this morning, that are designed against, okay, either hardware or software ways to prevent to prevent a repair. So so another even more counterintuitive, even we say CarlCare is one of the brands from Transient, the Chinese company, but virtually no Chinese people in China ever heard of this brand, okay, or Transient, except a few people who buy stocks. Okay, the stocks is actually, most of the stock prices for tech in China have been falling, but this is Transient is one of the exceptions because it's expanding in the global south, but not in China. Right, so it has zero market share in China now, not only for the mobile phone, but also for the repair service. So here, let me just, like I said, my role today is to give some big framework, right, and warm it up for Michelle, who will take us to Africa. Actually, in our research, we don't see Asia Pacific and Africa as two completely separate entities. We see them as a continuum, as a global south, okay, practices. And Transient also expanding to Latin America on a smaller scale. But the first thing I'd like to point out is that most of the discussion this morning are from, okay, North America, from Australia, from quote unquote Western countries, right? Oftentimes we are caught in this dualistic thinking of East versus West. So West is more market, liberal market, all right, whereas the East, China or Singapore, all right, is the more authoritarian. Okay, is they do not pay so much attention to market forces. But here, Transient and CarlCare is the reverse. Most of its success depends on the market needs on the ground. Another counterintuitive, okay, is to say the Asian, modernities. Okay, this extends from the first point, is that oftentimes the technological growth, okay, depends on state intervention. Before lunch, we heard the policies. Okay, in Singapore, we also pay a lot of attention to bodies such as the ACCC. Okay, the Australian. Okay, or of course the EU, the US also made their policy. Okay, pro repair or against repair, but this again policy, you don't see them that much in the global south. Very few global south government are making policies about repair, but still on the ground there are huge demands, right? So the Asian modernity, I think, is too simplistic to say is developmental state, state-driven, right? But there are actually genuine practices based on the market competition. Okay, there's a reason. It's not just transient, it's nice. They are there to help the poor people to fix their phones. But this is actually their competitive edge against the likes of Samsung and Huawei. Right? And so the digital infrastructure studies also tend to be focusing on the large scale, expensive, capital intensive developments that ended up in, developing destroying the environments, like the copper mine, in Chile, we learned this morning, right? But then this study actually also shows there are ways for infrastructure. We conceptualize CarlCare as an infrastructure in a truly infrastructural way for their clients, for the working class people and the communities on the ground. Okay, that is what we sometimes in Asian Pacific, study of technology, we call it the industrials revolution. Industrials means it's very labor intensive. The people work, long hours, in an intensive way to repair, in this case, smartphone, but it could also be other electronic gadgets. And these are widely scattered, and also they are smaller. Each unit is smaller, right? But the total size of the chain store, or of the networked units for this global repair brand, CarlCare is a brand, right? So they are also of considerable size, and they are these are not depending in Asia. Beijing, for example, often talk about south to south, right? The Xi Jinping was just in South Africa. Okay, so you see the state leaders, the presidents, right? Governments, right? Usually the ruling elite from the capital city are working with each other. But CarlCare is another case where it's not the elite, it's the grassroots people, from the small towns. And then they can actually they can use market force, and they can scale up, right, to allow us to have a different worldview of how repair may look like. This is a map we made based partially on the publicized data on CarlCare websites. You can visit them, but I think when we get some of these are actually more precise data, more updated data. And when we made this, the CarlCare manager actually asked us not to share this widely. So please don't take photo, all right? But then you can see where they are. This is where they started in West Africa, almost every West African nations, East and Central Africa, South Africa. And the size of the bubble, by the way, is the number. Okay, so the biggest footprints for CarlCare is more than 400 shops in Nigeria. Okay, the most populous nation in sub-Saharan Africa, so not surprising. But then also Ghana, where Michelle will tell us more, and Egypt too. But then by far the biggest, the global, so if we put all the sub-Saharan Africa together, is nearly 1,000. But if we put all the Indian together, India is actually, so altogether they have nearly 4,200 shops, right? And some are directly, some are official shops, some are authorized shops. So India actually accounts for more than 1/3 of all the shops, despite if you are following global news, New Delhi and Beijing are not necessarily on very friendly terms with each other. India led the world in banning Chinese apps, and also even Chinese phones at different time points. But then repair still is big, right, in India, right? And now they're expanding into Southeast Asia. And my personal sense is that there 235 shops in Russia is probably an underestimate. There are probably many more, but they don't want to show it, okay, to the for the geopolitical, okay, reasons. This is a diagram. These two are probably for the audience in the room. You already know this is the digital platform economy tree that Josef van Dijk made in her influential article. What I'd like just to point out is that this hardware, including repair, is at the root system, right? And oftentimes, infrastructure studies forget to look at repair because it's too small. But when we are looking at this kind of scale, right, and of course to connect all these 4,000 shops together and supply them with parts, okay, and also skills, right, and with the financial flow back and forth, you need a global infrastructure, right? This is the largest global infrastructure on the ground in the global South. And the U.S., of course, understandably, you know what Josef and Nick said is a grand sequoia, so it's very far removed from the root system. But in Asia Pacific, in the global South, you know, I made this. Actually, my wife, okay, draw this banyan tree as a way to visualize how the crown of the tree, okay, the big data, and also the software systems can have interactions, okay, can the banyan tree is also known as the walking tree, okay. It expands. The biggest banyan tree is in Calcutta, occupying a long, huge island, and the tree migrated from the north to the south, right, occupying the whole island. But then, because of the different soil have different chemicals, okay, or different wind, different climates, actually the different parts, different branches, okay, there are multiple trunks, and they can take on different properties depending on the local conditions. So this is what we are hoping to capture. Even it's the same layering, the stack, okay, at the bottom, but this is a place where, okay, we can see a decentralized, or can sometimes we call it a localized way, right, to think about repair. A little bit more background. Now, I mentioned Techno, the most influential brand from Transient to sell mobile phones in the global South. itel is the even lower end, even cheaper, okay, and Infinix, okay, is their high-end brands. Right? Now Infinix, I think, is making foldable phone, right? Yeah, and yes. So CarlCare is actually fix all three of these brands. Oh, maybe I got it wrong. Michelle, were you trying to say is Techno got a new foldable phone, or was Infinix?
I know Techno has launched a new model. Probably also Infinix. I need to double check.
Okay, so if we look at globally, okay, all these three brands together, they account for 12%. Okay, this is data we had from 2 years ago. This is 12% of the world's mobile phone are being sold in 2021 were from these three brands combined, right? And then they are trailing only. So this is the third largest smartphone supplier. So trailing only Samsung and Apple. So if you look at Huawei, okay, or Vivo, okay, and they actually sell less phones at least 2 years ago compared to the Transsion brands. And but then some of these are still feature phones. Okay, not all of them are smartphones, and especially in Africa. But in Southeast Asia, most of the phones are smartphones, and then they are designed for repairability, in part because there's a prehistory. Before Transsion, there's a company, domestic Chinese brand phone called Bird. This was the Chinese mobile phone 20 years ago, started to compete with foreign brands when the Chinese markets was domestic market was dominated by the likes of Nokia and Ericsson and Motorola, right? BIRD started as we call it a TVE, okay, township and village level. So it's a collective rural industrialization enterprise. And then they started by making pagers. And then this was the best-selling clamshell phone, very popular among factory workers in southern China about 15 years ago, right? And then the reason that BIRD phone was able to outcompete Nokia and similar is because Nokia only did marketing. They didn't even care to go to small towns in China, right? But then BIRD actually, the company actually started by creating 6,000. So just now you saw 4,000 chain stores all over the world. You may thought it's big, right? It's so many, right? But then for BIRD, they actually made 6,000. And the founder of Techno was a former high executive from BIRD. So he carried the business model from BIRD. Most of the core members of Techno or of Transient actually came from BIRD. So there's an organizational DNA where when they make phones, they consider repairability, and they would set up repair shops, thousands of them, first across China. And after BIRD wind down, they went to Africa and started with the same model. So you can say that even though no Chinese people, okay, very few Chinese people know Transient or CarlCare, but they all know this model from BIRD, from about 15 to 20 years ago. And so this changes our notion when we look at repair, and which is normally this. I visited these shops, okay, in Guangzhou, southern China, Manila, right, and this is Cape Town, in the slum of Cape Town, a shanty town, and the guy sitting behind the bars is a repair person. Okay, he could be robbed, so he put himself literally behind bars. This is in Singapore, Sim Lim Square. So almost all these repair person, okay, are single. I don't know whether they're single, but they are solo, okay, repairmen, lonely repairmen sitting usually like in a hole in the wall. These is a very typically artisan sector, okay, despite their variation in formal or informal economy. Okay, some are small scale, these are slightly larger scale, these are many together, it's a big scale, right? But then they also vary a lot in terms of profitability, right? And but then they're not socially connected. Okay, they compete with each other, right? Sometimes when I was in Cape Town, I was asking people about repair person. Some people are very friendly to talk to me. Other people, literally thought I was trying to start a new business and compete with them. So I was treated with some mild hostility when I tried to talk to this repair person. There's before Transient and CarlCare, this was a community. We mapped out all the mobile repair shops. So this is a working class community in southern China. And inside, this is another shanty town. So when we also mapped internet cafes. Okay, this was 15 years ago, right? Internet cafes tend to be on the outskirts where there are bus stops. But inside, you can see the repair shops are all inside in the depth of the community, very invisible. But this is actually the first time we see, repair has jumped. If we don't consider, iFixit, okay, this kind of the online spaces where there are global connectivity, but starting physical shops, right, and connecting them on a global scale, so this CarlCare is the biggest, and this F sign means where Techno or Transient actually have factories making the hardware, making the components, right? So you can see there's a cluster in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. They all have factories, but also there's in different parts of Africa, and of course China itself. So when you have factories close to the repair center, okay, they can respond more rapidly to the demand, on the front line of repair. One of the complaints I received from visiting this was the repairman, right, in Chiang Mai, was that the components are flowing too slowly to him. He does not have enough components for the repair needs on the ground. If you pay attention, he is not wearing CarlCare uniform. Okay, this is the CarlCare manager in Vietnam. He was wearing a CarlCare uniform. So this is part of the branding for the repair service. So this is, as Michelle will tell us more, this is authorized service center. This is official service center, right? And so they operate in different modes. If we just have a quick look at the inside, so this is how they repair. So this is a standardized repair desk. If you buy your own repair equipment, right, just the heater that will melt the glue in your mobile phone, right, can cost more than $300, right? But then this whole desk itself, I think, costs like $250 to put everything, not just the heater, but the melder, all the things you need, okay, including the table itself. Okay, this is actually a standardized equipment, part of the infrastructure, the repair infrastructure for official CarlCare repair chain stores, right? So they look also clean and nice inside, and they have their own components, right, made for different brands. So you can see this is iTel. This is the cheaper brand compared to Techno, right? But then there are these kind of warehouses. So this is the largest warehouse for Vietnam, located in Ho Chi Minh City, and then these parts are being sent to different repair shops throughout the country. And the main reason, okay, the manager wants, his name is Tony, he likes to work here. He used to work for Vivo, Samsung, and even Nokia in the old days. But then he said, working for other companies, he felt lonely. He couldn't interact with other people in English. He likes to speak. He does not speak a word of Chinese. Okay, but he likes the social networking. So I think this morning we heard about how repair shops, I think Stephen was talking about as a cultural node. This is actually something Tony really enjoys. It's the social cultural connections that he could get with his job at CarlCare. So with this, I'm turning over to Michelle, who will tell us more about Ghana and the categorization of CarlCare shops.
Okay, thanks, Jack, for introducing those trees and your field trip in Asia. Next, let me share some of my observations from Ghana. And the first thing I want to highlight about the CarlCare case is that it's not monolithic, but has internal diversity. So based on my interview, the company divides CarlCare shops into 3 major categories. The first category is called OSC, Official Service Center. It's built and owned by CarlCare itself, which really takes a lot of time and money. So in Ghana, excuse me, there are only 2 OSCs, one located in the capital Accra and the other in the second largest city, Kumasi. So the second category is called ASC, Authorized Service Center. It's also called third-party service center because in this model, CarlCare authorizes local third-party repair shops to repair transient brands, providing them both repair materials and technical training. So ASC can be further divided into two subcategories based on the different cooperation agreements between the two sides. One is the exclusive shop that's only allowed to repair transient brands, and the other is the multi-brand shop, which can repair both transient brands and other brands. The third category is called collection points, whose number is the highest among the three types. They are often dispersed in rural or remote areas where repair service is not available. So strictly speaking, a collection point is not a repair shop, as it cannot repair phones, but only collect and then resend them to AIC, OIC, or AIC for repair. So most collection points are distributors or retailers of transient phones in small towns. So they not only sell new phones, but also collect broken phones as a service for customers. So in Ghana, the total number of CarlCare shops increased from 18 in 2019 to 157 in this year, which is quite impressive. And this is largely due to the expansion of collection points and also ASC in remote areas. So if we look at the number of these three types of repair shops, their distribution follows a pyramid structure with a wide base and narrow top. So at a global level, this structure also applies to the 4,000 CarlCare shops Jack has just mapped. And while at the local level, the situation may vary from country to country. For example, both Vietnam and Thailand only have the second category, third-party AIC. They don't have official service centers yet, like Ghana, because the markets there are much smaller than Ghana. So next slide, please, Jack. This is an official service center in Ghana's capital, Accra. It's the largest CarlCare shop in the country and located in a busy mobile phone market. Previously, this shop only had 2 rooms on the 3rd floor, and this year, CarlCare relocated to a larger building and occupies the entire 1st floor. Next slide. This is an authorized service center from a small town in Ghana's eastern region. There's only 1 technician, 1 receptionist, and 1 manager there. It has been a repair shop for a while, but just redecorated as a CarlCare shop a year ago. So when I visited there this June, I didn't see many customers, and the manager complained to me that the profit margin of repairing transient phones is very low, lower than what they had expected when signing the contract with CarlCare. Well, despite this, they are still willing to work with CarlCare because it's better than working alone, especially given the fierce competition from other local repair shops. So although the customers are not many and the profit margin is not very high, they can have a stable income at least if working with CarlCare. So next slide. It's also in this sense that I think CarlCare creates a middle ground for both customers and local repair shops. Previously, there existed 2 major repair options in Ghana. At one extreme, official service centers set up by high-end brands like Samsung, Apple, and Huawei. In Ghana, Samsung has 6 service centers. Both Huawei and Apple only have 2. So these brands do not build service centers themselves, but authorize them to large local agents. This approach takes less time, but requires more capital. They tend to hire skilled labor because the salary is usually very good. They mainly focus on smartphone repair, and the prices are usually very high. At the other extreme, a large number of local repair shops often engage in so-called informal economy. They mainly target low-end users and absorb informal labor through apprenticeships. Their service is very affordable, but the quality may vary from technician to technician. So CarlCare came to Ghana around 2012, and it used a middle range approach between these two extremes. As I just mentioned, CarlCare set up its service centers partly through self-building and partly by cooperating with local repair shops, especially in inland remote areas. So except the Transsion brands, some of its shops can also repair Samsung, Huawei, and a few iPhone models. CarlCare mainly focuses on feature phone repair and tends to hire semi-skilled or unskilled labor. Most of its technicians I've met are very young. Some of them didn't have any repair skills before joining CarlCare, but learned how to repair through the training there. And in Accra, I once met 3 Chinese engineers flying from Shenzhen to provide training and technical support. So also because of this, I think CarlCare's repair practice is a process of double translation. From the material perspective, CarlCare negotiates the social life of mobile phone by translating broken or dysfunctional technologies into functional ones. While from the institutional perspective, CarlCare transforms local informal labor into professional technicians. And for many customers, the rise of CarlCare shop also creates a middle ground between the elitism of big tech and the informality of local repair shops. So in Kumasi, I once met a young man who took 7-hour bus to come to CarlCare for repair. He prefers CarlCare because he thinks it's both affordable and professional. For him, this is a new repair option that has just emerged recently. So overall, I think CarlCare is more deeply and widely embedded in local repair ecosystem compared with other big brands like Samsung or Huawei. And this creates more space where different repair actors can interact with each other, generating both new opportunities and tensions, like the complaints about the low profit margins. So I will stop here, and I will hand it back to Jack for summary. Jack, you have muted yourself.
Sorry for that. Yeah. And I just hope to conclude very quickly, because I think we probably run out of time. And is that in addition to, I think for people who are interested in repair, okay, you don't need me to tell you now that CarlCare is the elephant in the room. Right? But something more general here I'd like to say is that actually there are more than one Chinese model. Okay, when we think about the tech world, US versus China, okay, there's Chinese model is the Beijing paternal, okay, internet model, right? But here there are actually many other, I would say, CarlCare is only the beginning for us to see how newly emerging industrial forces responding to market demand in the global south, they can give rise to new to other models way beyond what today we call sometimes the Beijing consensus can cover. And so here we need to see through an inter-Asian lens that some of the most interesting aspects of Chinese tech actually has nothing to do, are not operating within China per se, because they are in the majority worlds of Ghana, and Southeast Asia, for example. And but then there are also some potential risks that I'd like to conclude with is that, like I mentioned, Transsion is now listed in the stock market. It's been doing very well compared to other tech, companies from China or even from Silicon Valley, right? But it is becoming more and more captured of the Wall Street, right? The financial capital, the quarterly report pressures, right? And for this end, repair is not necessarily something they want to expand. So it could even be from the perspective of ordinary stock investor, okay, repair could be seen as a negative asset. Right? So I think this actually is a big question mark. It's too early to say CarlCare is the solution for the world. It has caused many problems, even within, like I said, the speed of flow for components, or when the profitability is so low, it cannot support livelihood in Kumasi, for example, right? And then this will also cast doubts on the long-term sustainability of this model. Maybe just to think aloud, maybe CarlCare would be better off to be spin off from Transsion. Okay, this is just our internal, discussion. Yeah, I'll just conclude here. Thank you.